The days after Captain Minho's visit were filled with chaos. The Galactic Council met in emergency sessions that lasted through the night. Ambassadors argued until their voices gave out. Some demanded immediate action against humanity. Others called for calm and patience. Nobody could agree on anything. Meanwhile, news of the incident spread across the galaxy. The recording from the peaceful dawn leaked somehow. Soon, every species with access to communication technology had seen 12 humans tear apart 200 Velen warriors. Fear spread like fire. The Velen Empire was the first to respond. They sent a massive fleet toward human space, screaming about revenge and destruction. The Council watched nervously, expecting the start of a terrible war, but the war never came. A single human ship met the Velen fleet at the border. It was a small cruiser with maybe 50 crew members. The Velen had over 1,000 ships and 1 million soldiers. The human captain sent a simple message. We do not want to fight you. Please go home. The Velen commander laughed and ordered his fleet forward. What happened next became the most watched recording in galactic history. The human cruiser did not retreat. Instead, every member of its crew removed their limiters. Then they boarded a single shuttle, flew directly into the center of the Velen fleet, and spent the next 6 hours moving from ship to ship. When they were done, the Velen fleet was empty. 1 million soldiers were dead or running away in escape pods. The human crew calmly returned to their cruiser, put their limiters back on, and flew home. After that, nobody threatened humanity again, but the fear remained. Species that had been friendly with humans suddenly became nervous. Trade deals were canceled. Diplomatic missions were postponed. Humans found themselves alone in a galaxy that was too scared to come close. This situation lasted for 3 months. Then Ambassador Hana arrived. Hana was different from the other humans the Council had met. She was older, perhaps 60 years, with gray hair and wrinkled hands. She walked slowly and spoke softly, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. I have come to talk about the future, she said as she entered the council hall. Councilor Vex welcomed her with cautious respect. The council had learned that human appearances meant nothing. This gentle old woman could probably kill everyone in the room if she chose to. We've reviewed all of our previous interactions with your species, Vex said. Every battle, every negotiation, every trade agreement. We now understand them differently. What do you understand? Hana asked. Vex activated the great screen. It showed dozens of recordings, all playing at the same time. Human soldiers retreating from fights they could have won. Human diplomats accepting deals that seemed unfair. Human traders giving up profits they could have kept. We thought you were weak, Vex said. We thought you retreated because you were afraid. We thought you accepted bad deals because you had no choice. And now? Now we see the truth. Every retreat was a gift. You chose not to destroy enemies you could have easily defeated. Every bad deal was a sacrifice. You gave up advantages to maintain peace. You have been protecting us from yourselves for 400 years. Hana smiled softly. It was a grandmother's smile, warm and knowing. Yes, she said simply. Ambassador Crick stood up. His golden scales reflected the light from the screens. Why? He demanded. Why protect us? Why sacrifice for species that did not even appreciate what you were doing? Hana thought about her answer for a long moment. Before the Great War, there was a human who tried to stop the violence. Her name is not important. She stood in front of armies and begged them to choose peace. Nobody listened. She died trying to save a species that did not want it to be saved. Hana touched her limiter gently. After the war, when the survivors created these devices, they named them after her. The limiter program. Her last words were, "We can be better. We must be better. Our nature is not our destiny." The council was silent. Those words became our guide, Hana continued. For 400 years, every human child has learned them. We wear these devices not because we hate ourselves, but because we love the people we could become. The limited version of humanity is who we choose to be, not who we have to be. Counselor Dren spoke up. His voice was less hostile than before. But what happens when you face true danger? The Velen fleet was a threat. You removed your limiters and destroyed them. What if a bigger threat comes? What if you have to remove your limiters and never put them back on? That is the fear that keeps us awake at night, Hana admitted. We are always walking a thin line. Too much control, and we become slaves to our own devices. Too little control, and we become the monsters we used to be. It sounds exhausting, Crick said. It is, Hana agreed. Every single day. But it is worth it. She looked around the hall at the thousands of alien beings watching her. Look at this place. Look at all of you. Hundreds of species from thousands of worlds. You have different bodies, different minds, different histories. But you found a way to work together. You built a galactic council. You created peace. Hana's voice grew stronger. Humans want to be part of this. We want to contribute to something bigger than ourselves. We want to help build a galaxy where all species can live without fear. That is why we wear the limiters. That is why we hold back. That is why we choose peace, even when war would be easier. Counselor Vex leaned forward in his floating chair. He had lived for 500 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species destroy each other for power. But he had never seen anything like this. You could rule us, he said slowly. You could take everything. Every planet. Every resource. Every species. But instead, you choose to be equals. You choose to suffer with those devices around your necks just so you can be our friends. Yes, Hana said. Why should we trust you? How do we know you will not change your minds? Hana smiled again. She reached up and touched her limiter. You want proof that we mean what we say? Here is your proof. Every human in the galaxy is wearing one of these right now. Billions of us. We could remove them at any moment. We could become the greatest fighting force the universe has ever seen. She lowered her hand, but we don't. Every second of every day, we choose peace. We have been choosing peace for 400 years. That is not a trick. That is not a strategy. That is who we are now. Who we have worked so hard to become. The council hall was completely silent. Every alien being was thinking about what they had heard. The fear was still there, but something else was growing alongside it. Something that felt almost like respect. Finally, Counselor Vex spoke. The council will take time to discuss these matters. But I believe I speak for many when I say that we appreciate your explanation and your honesty. That is all I ask, Hana said. Give us time. Watch us. See how we behave. If we prove unworthy of your trust, you can always fear us later. But for now, perhaps try hoping instead. She stood up and prepared to leave. At the door, she turned back one more time. We chose peace, she said softly. Be grateful we keep choosing it. Then she was gone. The council sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the stars continued to burn. Ships continued to travel between worlds. The galaxy continued to spin, and somewhere on thousands of planets, billions of humans touched the silver limiters around their necks and felt the monsters sleeping inside them. They felt the power that they could use at any moment. The strength that was always there, waiting. But they kept the limiters on. They kept the monsters asleep. They kept choosing to be less than they could be, so they could be more than they used to be. This was humanity's greatest achievement. Not conquering the stars. Not building great ships. Not fighting incredible battles. Their greatest achievement was learning to control themselves, and the galaxy, slowly and carefully, began to understand what that really meant. Captain Minho arrived exactly when he said he would. His ship was a small transport vessel, barely large enough for one person. It had no weapons that the Council's sensors could detect. It seemed almost insulting that the humans would send such a tiny craft for such an important meeting. But the Council had learned not to judge humans by appearances anymore. Minho walked into the great hall with calm confidence. He was a man of average height with a kind face and gentle eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform with no medals or decorations. Around his neck, of course, was the silver limiter that all humans wore. The council members studied him carefully. This was the first human they had seen since the incident. They tried to imagine this peaceful-looking man fighting like the creatures they had watched on the recording. It seemed impossible, but they knew better now. "Thank you for meeting with me," Minho said. His voice was soft and polite. "I understand you have questions." "We have many questions," Counselor Vex replied. "Please sit." A floating chair appeared for the human. Minho sat down and looked around the hall. Thousands of alien beings stared back at him. He did not seem nervous. "Where would you like me to begin?" he asked. Vex pointed at the silver device around Minho's neck. "That thing." "What is it?" Minho touched his limiter gently. "We call it a neural limiter. Or just a limiter. Every human wears one from the age of 3. What does it do?" "It suppresses approximately 90% of our natural capabilities," Minho explained. "Our physical strength, our speed, our reflexes, our aggression, our survival instincts. Everything that makes us dangerous is reduced to about 1/10 of its true level." The hall went very quiet. The aliens looked at each other with growing fear. "You are telling us," Ambassador Crick said slowly, "that every human we have ever met has been operating at only 10% of their real power?" "Yes, every soldier, every athlete, every worker. Yes, the battles we watched, the wars you fought. You were always holding back," Minho nodded. "Always. Without exception." Counselor Dren leaned forward. His red face was twisted with disbelief. "Why? Why would you do this to yourselves?" Minho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with old pain. 400 years ago, we almost destroyed ourselves. The Great War. You have probably read about it in our history books. But your books do not tell the full story. "Tell us," Beck said. "Before the limiters, humans were different. We felt everything more strongly. Love, hate, fear, anger. Our emotions controlled us instead of the other way around. When we fought, we could not stop. When we hated, we could not forgive. When we wanted something, we would do anything to get it." Minho paused and closed his eyes. The Great War started over a simple disagreement between two nations. It should have been solved with talks. Instead, it became the worst violence our planet had ever seen. Humans fought without mercy, without rules, without limits. We used every weapon we had: nuclear, chemical, biological. We burned cities. We poisoned water. We killed without counting. 3 billion dead, Crick said quietly. "We read that number." "The official number is 3 billion, Minho corrected. "The real number is higher. Much higher. We stopped counting when we realized it did not matter anymore. What mattered was that we were killing ourselves. Our species was going to disappear from the universe." "But you survived," Vex said. "Barely." The survivors looked at what we had done and made a decision. We could not trust ourselves. We could not control our own nature through willpower or education or laws. We needed something stronger, something that would physically stop us from becoming monsters again. The limiters. Yes, our greatest scientists work together to create them. The devices connect to our nervous systems at a very young age. They become part of us. They filter our emotions. They reduce our physical capabilities. They make us slower, weaker, calmer. Minho looked directly at Counselor Vex. They make us safe. For ourselves and for everyone around us. The hall was silent as the aliens tried to understand what they were hearing. Humans had willingly made themselves weaker. They had chosen to live as shadows of their true selves. Not because they had to, but because they were afraid of what they really were. The woman on the recording, Dren said. Commander Yuna? She removed her limiter. Yes, Minho said. That is forbidden under normal circumstances. But she was facing death. Her crew was facing death. In that situation, the rules allow for emergency removal. And what we saw was what a human truly looks like. Fast, strong, violent, terrifying. Minho's voice was sad. Beautiful in a way, but also horrible. We do not like to remember that we have that inside us. Crick stood up from his chair. His forearms were crossed over his chest. You have been lying to us. All these years. You pretended to be weaker than you are. You let us think we understood you. You let us classify you as adequate but unremarkable. Everything was a lie. Not a lie, Minho said calmly. A choice. We chose to present our controlled selves to the galaxy. We chose to be peaceful. We chose to be cooperative. We chose to be partners instead of conquerors. But you could conquer us, Crix pressed. If you wanted to, you could destroy every fleet, every army, every empire. Minho did not answer immediately. He seemed to be thinking about his words carefully. Yes, he finally said. We probably could. If every human removed their limiter at the same time, if we allowed ourselves to become what we once were, yes, we would be very difficult to stop. Then why don't you? Dren demanded. Why live as weak versions of yourselves? Why serve alongside species that you could easily dominate? Minho smiled sadly. Because we have seen what domination leads to. We have seen what unlimited power does to our minds. The Great War taught us that lesson in blood and fire. We do not want to be masters of the galaxy. We want to be members of it. Counselor Vex had been quiet for a long time. Now he spoke again. The incident with Commander Yuna. Is that what triggered this revelation? Partly, Minho admitted. We knew we could not hide forever. Sooner or later, there would be a situation where a human had to remove their limiter. We hoped it would happen more quietly. In private. Without recordings. But now the galaxy knows. Now the galaxy knows, Minho agreed. And you have a choice to make. Vex tilted his head. What choice is that? You can fear us. You can try to destroy us before we destroy you. You can start a war that would make our great war look like a small fight. Minho paused. Or you can trust us. You can accept that we have chosen peace for 400 years. You can believe that we will continue to choose peace. You can let us remain your friends and partners. And if we choose fear? Crix asked. Minho's eyes became very serious. Then you will discover that 12 humans on a broken diplomatic ship were just a small taste of what our species can do. And I really hope you do not make us show you more. It was not a threat. It was simply a fact. And everyone in the hall understood exactly what it meant. The council had much to discuss. But for now, they simply stared at the quiet human sitting before them, trying to see the monster that lived behind his gentle eyes. The first Velen soldier came through the breach with his weapon raised. He was screaming. His mouth was open wide, showing rows of sharp teeth. He had killed many creatures in his life. He expected this to be easy. He never saw Yuna move. One moment she was standing 10 meters away. The next moment, she was in front of him. Her hand went through his chest like it was made of paper. The Velen soldier looked down in confusion. He tried to understand what had happened, but his brain stopped working before he could figure it out. Yuna pulled her arm free and turned to face the others. Her white uniform was now red with alien blood. Her eyes had changed. They were no longer calm and diplomatic. They burned with something ancient and terrifying. Behind her, the rest of her crew spread out through the corridors. They moved faster than any creature should be able to move. They hit harder than any creature should be able to hit. They were not the same humans who had worn those silver limiters. They were something else entirely. In the Galactic Council Hall, every being sat frozen with shock. They watched as 12 humans tore through 200 Velen warriors like they were toys. Duhan, the big pilot, grabbed 2 Velen soldiers and threw them through a metal wall. The wall broke. The soldiers did not get up again. He moved to the next group without slowing down. Sumi, the doctor who had been shaking with fear minutes ago, fought with perfect precision. She knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. Every hit was fatal. Every movement was efficient. She did not waste a single motion. Junho, the young assistant, showed no mercy. His gentle face had become a mask of focused rage. He broke bones. He crushed armor. He kept moving forward no matter how many enemies tried to stop him, and Yuna led them all. She was everywhere at once. She appeared in front of enemies who had no time to react. She disappeared before they could strike back. The Velen warriors were trained killers who had spent their whole lives learning to fight. Against Yuna, they looked like children. What are we watching? Ambassador Crix whispered. His golden scales had turned pale. This cannot be real. Counselor Vex said nothing. He simply stared at the screen with his ancient eyes. He had lived for 500 years. He had seen many terrible things, but he had never seen anything like this. The battle, if it could be called a battle, lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes for 12 humans to completely destroy 200 Velen soldiers. The corridors of the peaceful dawn were covered in blood and broken bodies. When it was over, Yuna stood in the center of the carnage. She was breathing heavily. Her hands were covered in red and blue and green blood from the various species in the Velen crew. Her eyes slowly began to return to normal. Around her, the other humans were stopping too. They looked at their hands. They looked at what they had done. Some of them seemed horrified. Others seemed strangely calm. Everyone okay? Yuna asked. Her voice was rough. We're alive, Don said. He was looking at a Velen body that he had literally torn in half. We're all alive. Good. Yuna took a deep breath. Find your limiters. Put them back on. Nobody moved. Now, she said more firmly. Before we lose ourselves completely. They understood. The limiters did more than control their strength. They controlled their minds too. Without them, the rage could take over. The hunger for violence could become permanent. Humans had learned this lesson long ago, during the dark times that almost ended their species. One by one, the crew found their limiters and put them back around their necks. The silver devices glowed as they reconnected with human nervous systems. Muscles relaxed. Eyes became softer. Breathing slowed. The monsters went back to sleep. In the council hall, the recording continued to play. The aliens watched as the humans repaired their jump drive using parts from the Velen ships. They watched as the peaceful dawn limped away from the battlefield. They watched as the small diplomatic vessel disappeared into faster-than-light travel. Then the screen went dark. For a long time, nobody spoke. The council hall, which usually buzzed with arguments and discussions, was completely silent. Finally, Counselor Vex spoke. His voice was barely a whisper. Play it again. The recording played again. And again. And again. Each time, the council watched more carefully. They slowed down the footage. They studied every movement. They tried to understand what they had witnessed. "It is impossible," said Counselor Dren. His red skin had become almost white. "No species can move that fast. No species can hit that hard. The physics do not allow it." "And yet we saw it," Ambassador Crix replied. "With our own eyes. Those devices around their necks," Vex said slowly. "The silver ones. They removed them before the fight. And they put them back on afterward. What are they?" Dren asked. "I do not know," Vex admitted. "But I intend to find out." The council immediately sent requests to the human government. They wanted explanations. They wanted answers. They demanded to know what had happened on that ship. For 3 days, there was no response. The humans seemed to be discussing among themselves. Finally, a message came back. It was short and simple. "We will send a representative to explain. His name is Captain Minho. He will arrive in 5 days." The council waited. They spent those 5 days reviewing every piece of information they had about humans. Their history. Their wars. Their technology. They looked at old recordings from before humans joined the galactic community. They found something interesting. Humans had almost destroyed themselves 400 years ago. Their history books called it the Great War. It lasted only 18 months, but it killed 3 billion people. Nearly half of their species died in less than 2 years. After the war, something changed. Human behavior became different. They became calmer, more controlled, more peaceful. The council had always assumed this was just natural evolution. Now they were not so sure. "The limiters," Vex said during one late-night discussion. "They started wearing those devices after the Great War. Every human we have ever met has been wearing one." "You think the devices are controlling them?" Dren asked. "I think the devices are restraining them," Vex corrected. "There is a difference. A cage controls an animal. A leash restrains it. The question is, what exactly are they restraining?" Crix pulled up more footage from the attack on the Peaceful Dawn. He froze the image at the moment Una removed her limiter. In that single frame, her face was transforming from diplomatic calm to something primal and savage. "Whatever they are hiding," Crix said quietly, "it is something terrible. Something so dangerous that they put chains on themselves to keep it contained. And they have been wearing those chains every day," Vex added. "Every hour. Every minute. For 400 years. The council members looked at each other with new understanding. Suddenly, all those battles they had observed made sense. The humans had not been fighting cautiously because they were weak. They had been fighting cautiously because they were afraid of their own strength. Every retreat had been a choice. Every careful move had been deliberate control. The humans had been holding back, not because they could not do more, but because they were terrified of what would happen if they did. And now the galaxy knew their secret. The question was, what were they going to do about it? 6 months passed after the battle with the Velen Raiders. The galaxy continued to spin. Stars were born and stars died. And humanity continued to be watched. Commander Una was not a soldier. She was a diplomat. Her job was to talk, not to fight. She wore a white uniform instead of gray. Her ship, the Peaceful Dawn, carried no heavy weapons. It was designed for meetings and negotiations, not for war. Una was 34 years old. She had black hair that fell to her shoulders and eyes that seemed to see through lies. Around her neck, like all humans, she wore a silver limiter. It glowed softly as she walked through the corridors of her ship. "Commander," said her assistant, a young man named Juno, "we are approaching the meeting point." Una nodded. Today was supposed to be simple. She was meeting with representatives from the Torak Empire to discuss trade routes. The Torak were difficult but fair. They respected strength and honor. Yuna had dealt with them many times before. "Any ships on sensors?" she asked. "None, Commander." "The area is clear." Yuna felt a small twist in her stomach. Something was not right. The meeting point was an open space, far from any planets or stations. It was a good place for private talks, but it was also a good place for ambush. "Stay alert," she said quietly. Her crew consisted of 12 people. There was Junho, her assistant. There was Sumi, the ship's doctor. There was Dawn, the pilot. And there were 9 others who handled communications, engineering, and security. They were all good people. They were all wearing limiters. The peaceful dawn came out of faster-than-light travel and stopped in empty space. There were no Torak ships waiting for them. There was nothing but darkness and distant stars. "This is wrong," Yuna whispered. Before she could give another order, space around them lit up with weapons fire. Ships appeared from behind a nearby asteroid field. They were not Torak ships. They were Velen. "Ambush!" Dawn shouted. 20 ships? No, more than that. I counted at least 50. The peaceful dawn shook as energy beams hit its hull. Alarm screamed. Lights flickered. Yuna grabbed the edge of her chair and held on. "Get us out of here," she ordered. "I can't," Dawn said. His hands moved fast over the controls. "They hit our jump drive. We're stuck." More hits, more damage. The small diplomatic ship was being torn apart piece by piece. It was never meant to survive this kind of attack. "They're hailing us," Junho said. His face was pale with fear. "Put them through." The screen flickered and the Velen face appeared. It was ugly and scarred. Its eyes burned with hatred. "Human ship," the Velen growled. "You destroyed 8 of our vessels. You embarrassed us in front of the galaxy. Now you will pay." "This is a diplomatic vessel," Yuna said. Her voice was calm and steady. "We carry no weapons. We are not soldiers." The Velen laughed. It was a terrible sound, like metal scraping against metal. "We do not care. We will board your ship. We will take your crew. And we will make you suffer. Every one of you will beg for death before we are done." The transmission ended. Yuna sat in silence for a long moment. She could hear her crew breathing. She could feel their fear. 12 humans against 200 Velen warriors. There was no hope. There was no escape. Far away, in the Galactic Council Hall, alarms were ringing. The Council had been watching a different part of space, but emergency protocols had detected the attack on the human ship. "Show us," Counselor Vex commanded. The great screen changed. It showed the peaceful dawn, smoking and broken, surrounded by Velen warships. Shuttles were already leaving the Velen vessels, carrying soldiers to board the human ship. "A diplomatic vessel," Ambassador Crick said. "The humans will have no choice but to surrender." "The Velen will not accept surrender," said Counselor Dren. "They want revenge. They will torture those humans for weeks before killing them." The Council watched in silence. Some felt pity. Some felt nothing at all. This was the way of the galaxy. The weak were destroyed by the strong. It had always been this way. On the peaceful dawn, Yuna stood up from her chair. She walked to the center of the bridge and looked at her crew. They looked back at her with frightened eyes. "The Velen will board this ship in 6 minutes," she said. "They will not show mercy. They will not take prisoners." "What do we do, Commander?" Sumi asked. The doctor's hands were shaking. Yuna reached up and touched a limiter around her neck. It was warm. It was always warm. It had been part of her since she was a child. It had kept her calm through every difficult moment of her life. It had stopped her from feeling too much. from reacting too strongly, from becoming what she truly was. "We have a choice," Yuna said slowly. "We can die as we are, controlled, peaceful, civilized." She paused. Her crew waited, or we can remove our limiters. Silence. Absolute silence. Even the alarm seemed to go quiet. Junho was the first to speak. "Commander, that is forbidden. The limiters are there for a reason. We took an oath." "I know," Yuna said. "But the oath was to protect innocence. There are no innocents here. There is only us and them." Dohan stood up from his pilot's chair. He was a big man with broad shoulders. His hands were rough from years of work. "I have never removed my limiter," he said. "I don't know what will happen." "None of us do," Yuna admitted. "The limiters have been with us since birth. They suppress 90% of our natural abilities. Our strength, our speed, our aggression, our survival instincts. Without them, we will be different people. We might not be able to control ourselves," Sumi said quietly. "No," Yuna agreed. "We might not." The ship shook again. Somewhere in the distance, metal screamed as the vellum cutting tools began to break through the hull. They had 4 minutes left. Maybe less. Yuna looked at each member of her crew. She saw their fear, but she also saw something else. Something burning deep in their eyes. A fire that the limiters had kept small for so long. "I will not force anyone," she said. "This is a personal choice, but I am removing mine. If I'm going to die, I will die as a true human. Not a controlled version. Not a safe version. The real thing." She reached up and pressed the release button on her limiter. There was a soft click. The silver device fell from her neck and hit the floor. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then everything changed. In the Galactic Council Hall, Councilor Vex leaned forward. His old eyes went wide. Something had just happened on that screen. Something that made no sense. What was that? He demanded. What did she just do? Nobody answered. They were all staring at the screen. Staring at the human woman who had just removed something from her neck. She was still standing in the same place. She was still wearing the same uniform. But somehow, she looked completely different. Her posture had changed. Her eyes had changed. Even the air around her seemed to vibrate with strange energy. One by one, the other humans removed their limiters too. 12 silver devices fell to the floor. 12 humans stood in silence as their true selves awakened for the first time in their lives. Outside, the Velen soldiers finished cutting through the hull. 200 warriors poured into the human ship, weapons ready, screaming battle cries. They had no idea what was waiting for them inside. The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from across the universe. They were tall creatures with blue skin. There were small ones with many eyes. There were those made of light and those made of stone. They all came together once every cycle to watch the younger species. Today, they watched the humans. High Counselor Vex sat on his floating chair. His gray skin was old and wrinkled. He had seen many species rise and fall. He had watched empires grow strong and then turn to dust. But he had never seen a species quite like humans. "Show us the battle," Vex said. His voice was tired but curious. The great screen in the center of the hall came to life. It showed the darkness of space. Stars burned in the distance. And there, floating between 2 moons, was a human fleet. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of his ship, the Morning Star. He was a tall man with short black hair and calm eyes. He wore the gray uniform of the Human Defense Force. Around his neck was a small silver device that glowed with soft blue light. "Admiral," said his first officer, a young woman named Sora. "The Velen raiders are approaching." 20 ships. Taiho nodded slowly. He looked at the screen in front of him. The Velen ships were ugly things. They were covered in spikes and weapons. The Velen were a violent species. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who stood in their way. How many civilians on the colony? Taiho asked. 3,000, Sora replied. Mostly farmers and their families. Taiho closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about those families. He thought about the children who were probably hiding in shelters right now, scared and confused. He would not let them die. All ships, he said into his communicator, form defensive line. Protect the colony at all costs. The human fleet moved. There were only 8 ships. They were smaller than the Velen vessels. They had fewer weapons, but they moved with perfect order. Each ship knew its place. Each captain trusted the others. Back in the Galactic Council Hall, the aliens watched with mild interest. The humans are outnumbered, said Ambassador Crix, a being with 4 arms and golden scales. This will be quick. Perhaps, said Counselor Vex. But let us watch. The battle began. The Velen ships attacked with wild anger. They fired their weapons in all directions. Their strategy was simple. Destroy everything and take what was left. The human ships did not charge forward. They held their position. They fired carefully, each shot hitting its target. When the Velen pushed too hard, the humans would pull back. When the Velen spread too thin, the humans would strike. Admiral Taiho watched the battle unfold. His face showed no fear. His hands did not shake. He gave orders in a calm, steady voice. Ship 4, fall back. Ship 7, cover their retreat. Ship 2, target that cruiser on the left. The battle lasted for 3 hours. The humans lost 2 ships. The Velen lost 8. But still, the raiders kept coming. They were angry now. They wanted blood. Admiral, Sora said, we cannot hold much longer. Should we call for reinforcements? Taiho looked at the battle map. He saw the damaged ships. He saw the tired crews. He knew that if they stayed, more would die. But if they left, the colony would be destroyed. Signal the colony, he said. Begin evacuation. We will hold as long as we can. The next 2 hours were the hardest. The human ships fought with everything they had. They took hits. They caught fire. But they did not break. They gave the colonists time to escape. When the last transport was safely away, Taiho gave the order to retreat. The remaining human ships turned and jumped into faster-than-light travel. The Velen were left with an empty colony and broken pride. In the council hall. The aliens finished watching the recording. There was a moment of silence. Interesting, said Counselor Vex. The humans fight well enough. They are organized. They are disciplined. But they retreated, said Ambassador Crix. They could have stayed and fought to the last ship. That is what the Torak would do. That is what the Ven would do. Yes, Vex agreed. The humans seem to value survival over glory. They fight only as hard as they need to. No more, no less. A younger counselor spoke up. His name was Dren, and his skin was the color of fresh blood. Perhaps they are simply weak. Perhaps they do not have the fire that makes great warriors. The other counselors nodded. This seemed like a reasonable explanation. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only been traveling among the stars for 200 years. They were still learning, still growing. It made sense that they would be careful. We will continue to watch them, Vex said. For now, we will classify them as Category 3, adequate but unremarkable. They may prove useful as traders or diplomats, but they will never be a military power. The decision was recorded. The classification was official. Humanity was labeled as average. Just another young species trying to survive in a dangerous galaxy. None of the counselors noticed a small smile on Vex's assistant's face. Her name was Tella, and she had met humans before. She had seen something in their eyes that the others had missed. Something that made her nervous, but she said nothing. It was not her place to question the council. And besides, she told herself, perhaps she was wrong. Perhaps humans really were just ordinary creatures doing their best. Far away, on the bridge of the Morning Star, Admiral Taiho removed his helmet. He rubbed the silver device around his neck. It was warm against his skin. "Good work, everyone," he said to his crew. "We saved 3,000 lives today. That is all that matters." Sora looked at him with respect. "The Velen will not forget this, Admiral. They will come back stronger." "Let them come," Taiho said quietly. "We will be ready." He walked to his quarters and sat in the darkness. He looked at his hands. They were steady. They were always steady. The device around his neck made sure of that. It kept him calm. It kept him controlled. It kept the monster inside him asleep. All humans wore these devices. They called them limiters. They had worn them for 300 years. Ever since the Great War that almost destroyed Earth, the limiters kept humanity safe. They kept the galaxy safe. Taiho closed his eyes and slept. His dreams were empty and peaceful. The universe had no idea what was sleeping inside every human being. And for now, that was for the best.